What's going on, guys? It's Manuel Godoy here again for another lesson. I'm a little bit late, but I had a couple of business meetings. Even though it's 8 o'clock at night, we still have business meetings. So let's begin. Let's start this up. First things first, I hope you guys got through your week well. And I hope you worked on your beat sheets. So if you start your beat sheets, that's great because you need that. You need to be able to define your story, right? Today we're going to be talking about heroes and villains, all right? Heroes and villains, why they're important and why you need to develop this the right way. Don't forget to hit that like button too. So if you're here, hit that like button. Let us know that you care, and we will get this done for you. So, uh, first of all, I'm willing to listen to a couple of pitches for their log lines before we begin. I'll only take about 3 minutes looking at those, and then I'm going to get right into this lesson. It's going to be a lot faster than the last one because, in all honesty, we just need to move a little quicker on these lessons. We're going to be going through them 30 minutes max, knock it out of the park, and we're going to move on to the next one, and eventually you're going to be writing basically 1,000 words a day. That's what I want from you guys, and that's what we're going to be getting. So let's start this up. Boom, boom, boom. And if you have any of your log lines, just put them in the comment section, and we'll go from there. What's up, Real Black? People from Facebook, what's good? What's good? Let's see what we got here. Boom. So let's talk about the memorable character, all right? I think this is pretty important that we understand that basically, the main character has to be memorable. It can't just be some guy who does a specific thing. If that was the case, right, there'd be a lot of boring main characters. So let's go into it, right? We tend to think that the protagonist and the antagonist are the most important elements of the story. We seem to forget that these roles require significant obstacles to truly shine. This is why people find Superman pretty corny, is because he has little to no adversity. Adversity is one of our most powerful tools. And all characters should affect the journey in a significant way. Otherwise, why mention them at all? So, in other words, you might have a bunch of side characters in a story, and maybe you want to throw this side character in there episode 1 because in episode 7 he's going to be very important. But most people don't do that. I mean, most professional stuff don't do that. And the reason why they don't do it is simply because it's taking screen time away from the important people at the moment. All right. So what we want to do is we don't want to introduce people because they'll be important in episode 8. Instead, we'll just introduce them in episode 8. All right. That's how we're going to do it. People do this a lot. Amateur writers, they do it a lot. They bring characters in that have absolutely no purpose in the story for months, possibly years. Right? But they throw it in anyway because they feel like they don't want to surprise people with that character later on. So I just want to be perfectly clear. We need to think about why we're putting characters in the story before we actually put them in. All right. So let's go a little further. So on the hero side, we have 3 basic roles, right? So this is the protagonist side. This is the side for the protagonist. We usually have the hero, the sidekick, and the mentor. The hero is usually classified as the main character. The story is told through the eyes of the main character, all right? This character needs dramatic change. So whatever the character starts the story with, they need to end the story in a completely different way, okay? They shouldn't be at the same spot they were at the beginning of the story, all right? They must also be, he said, it's a good idea to make that character, whoever that main character is, to be a little stubborn, right? To be kind of not wanting to go to that new way of being. You understand? They don't want to change. All right. It helps with the story, and they have to suffer a little too, right? They have to basically because of their decisions. Some of them have to turn out bad. They have to. Otherwise, it's going to be too generic of a story. You know. Then you have the sidekick. The sidekick follows the main character, right? They follow them. They let them. They basically help them, but they don't guide them, right? Uh, they usually live with the decisions of the main character. So in other words, the main character makes a decision, the sidekick usually has to follow that person's decision. You understand? They don't have a choice in the matter. They're always under the main character. Uh, they have their own unique skills, though. There's no reason to have a sidekick if that person is not unique and different from the main character. Sometimes the sidekick is the one who's right the whole time, and it's the main character who's kind of the person who's wrong. You know, happens all the time in stories where basically the sidekick's trying to convert the main character to their side. In a lot of relationship stories, this is the case where the sidekick tends to be the loving person who never tells the main character what to do, but secretly is the main love of their life, right? If only they would recognize them as such. You understand what I'm saying? All right, and then we have the mentor. The mentor is the person who's actually who's actually in charge of your main character. All right, this is the person who teaches them the ways of life, who gives the wisdom, who's the professional, right? So they guide the main. They're significantly more skilled at whatever the main task is, and they understand the real issues, right? But the problem is with this character, if they do everything, right, then they cause a problem. We shouldn't care about the hero too much if the mentor is the one who does absolutely everything. There's a reason why Levi in Attack on Titans, Levi fights maybe 3 times in the entire series. In the entire series, Levi fought like 3 times. Every other time, everyone else had to fight. Levi only fought like 3 times in the entire series. The reason for that is because he's overpowered as hell. He's super overpowered. And because he's overpowered, people don't want to use him, right, too much, because then it makes it the Levi show, right? So he has to find a reason why he shouldn't fight, you know? So that's a cool way that the people who created the series try to avoid the problem of having somebody so powerful that the main character is obsolete. Let's move it. By the way, if you have any comments, questions, whatever, just leave them in the comments section. So on the villain side, we have the rival, the unconcerned, and the organization. All right, these are basically kinds of villains, right? What we consider villain might be a person. It also could be an institution. It could be a whole bunch of things. So these are the 3 type of villains I see in almost every story. So the rival is basically has personal history with the main character. All right, this is somebody who has personal vendetta, personal grudge, you know, with the main character. Something splits them apart. So maybe they're friends, and then something breaks them apart, right? Tends to be an even match to the main and has more conflict than most. So in other words, in these kind of stories with rivalries, they tend to not dominate. So in other words, in a rivalry story, a story about 2 rivals, basically, usually it's a give and take situation. So in other words, sometimes the villain wins, sometimes the villain loses, but nobody truly dominates the other throughout the entire story. That's the struggle of the story, is who will win this rivalry, right? Victory or defeat can feel empty. So in other words, even if you win, it might not feel good. It might not feel like a triumph. You understand? This is the 2 sides of a coin type story. Sometimes you're rooting for the bad guy, you know, because at the end of the day, they're so similar. Then you have the unconcerned. The unconcerned is this type cares little for the main character, right? So in other words, they're doing their own thing. They don't care about the main character. They don't think that person's important. All they're trying to do is conquer the galaxy. All right. So they're the hero of their own story. All right. They have an enemy they must defeat. They tend to be wildly more powerful than the main character. So in other words, when you watch Star Wars, let's say, right? Let's say Star Wars, right? The original Star Wars. The Emperor doesn't give a damn about Luke, right? The Emperor doesn't care if Luke Skywalker exists or not. He doesn't care. You know why he doesn't care? Because he's trying to take out the Senate and try to take out the last of the resistance so that he can rule the galaxy. Luke Skywalker doesn't matter. He doesn't even think that Luke Skywalker is but any different from any other soldier out there in the resistance. They don't care, right? So the entire film, Luke is trying to show that he matters, and most people on the enemy side could care less. You know, even Darth Vader is like, okay, good for you. Now I'm gonna take out these rebels. You know, he's like, okay, I guess you're somebody who's special, but I'm gonna take out these rebels. So that's the unconcerned. The unconcerned superpower that tends to be way more powerful than the main character. And then the organization. It's an opposing force against the main, tends to be multiple levels, and is extremely established. So this is more like a society thing. So imagine, have you ever seen the movie In Time, where basically people paid for things using time in their body, and if they ran out of time, they died, right? But there was no more money. Time was the currency, and people who were very rich lived forever. Nobody ever aged, so nobody got old or anything. It was just if you had time, you stayed perfect for the rest of your life, right? And they had districts. You couldn't get out the districts unless you had a certain amount of time, right? Because they had heavy taxes for moving from one district to the next. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you know, there's a system in place that's stopping the main character, right? That's stopping all the people in the main character story. So this is more like the, you know, one of those society against the people type stories. That's what an organizational villain is. All right, now Jonah Hill has a log line. So let's go through that one real quick. My log line is 18-year-old boy who is trained to be a powerful wizard by his mentor, who is a magical book fight evil wizard lord, and his servants. And let's work on the English on this one. Just look over it, clean it up a bit so I can read it clearly. And once I'm able to read that clearly, I'll be able to give some advice on it. It's just a little bit hard to figure out what's being said. Let's see. All right, so here's a question that I think is actually pretty important. I'm a 24-year-old Black creator. Is it wise to invest $15,000 to self-publish my first book? Why would you need to spend $15,000? I don't see anything being that expensive. You can do a 100-page graphic novel, right, or a 100-page manga, and publish it for $10,000. That's 100 pages drawn. So I don't see any reason why you should do 15,000. Watch out for those scams, man. There's a lot of scams out there. Yes. This is a good question. Would another unconcerned be how the Royal Navy treats Captain Jack Sparrow? Yes. The Royal Navy. Although the Royal Navy is not necessarily the main villain, right? The main villain is the rival, Barbossa. Barbossa is basically just as skilled as Jack is, and they win and lose all the time against each other, whether they're working together or working as enemies. Barbosa and Jack, have a love-hate relationship. You know what I'm saying? And and what makes the Pirates of the Caribbean so good is there is a rival system. There's also an unconcerned system, which brings a lot of the comedy to the story, where the Royal Navy thinks that Jack is a joke, right? He's just a joke, just another pirate, a little bum, right? And society, right, won't allow them to take him seriously because he's just another pirate. They should take him seriously, but they would be embarrassed if they did take him seriously because you're putting all these resources to catch a pirate. They're just bums. So there's a lot of cool things that happens in Pirates of the Caribbean. They have all the elements. They have all the elements of a great series. Let's see. Let's keep moving. Boom, boom, boom. All right, let's talk about motivations. So motivations need to be carnal, all right? They can't be too complicated. So what happens is this. A lot of people, they go and talk about their motivations, right? And they say, hey, my main character, well, first I want to tell you, back in the day in 1964, there was a time where he lost his watch, but the watch was really made out of silver, and silver is bad with werewolves. This werewolf came to him and said, hey, why do you have a silver? It's too much things going on. Way too complicated. You need to make this easier to be able to say why your character is the way they is, right? So there's a main factor for why they're going to do whatever they're doing throughout the story. And it's usually one thing. One thing drives them, all right? So these are the main things that will drive somebody, right? Revenge. Everybody understands revenge. There's not a single person in the universe who doesn't understand the concept of revenge. Love. Another one. I'm doing this because I love someone. I'm doing this because I don't want to die, right? Not because I have to do some really complicated thing. That's the A story. We'll learn that throughout the entire story. We don't need to know that that's why they're doing this. Doing it to survive, doing it for fame, doing it for wealth, doing it for lust. I don't care. So long as it's very easy to understand for everybody in the audience, then it's the right one. So really what we need to do is we got to start making our characters, and we got to start making them very, what's it called? Specific on what their motivations are. So what you need to do is you need to start thinking of your characters, right? And what I want you to do is make all three of the things that I showed. So let me pull it back up. I'm going to pull it back up just so we got it here. But I want you to make these three things. You got to make the hero, the main character, the sidekick, or somebody who supports the main character, and then the mentor, somebody who guides the main character. Make those three elements for your story. I don't care if they're really powerful or not. All I care about is that you're thinking in that way. All right. And then for the villain side, I want you to make a rival, somebody who's competing with the main character. I want you to make someone who's unconcerned with the main character because they have their own story to tell. So in other words, the unconcerned has their own story. They're not worried about you because you're not a part of their story. You're trying to get into their story, but they don't really care about you. They're doing something for some other reason. You understand? So the unconcerned really needs to be in there as well. And then the organization. What does society say about this main character? How does society oppose what this main character wants to do? Write those things down. Don't even worry about giving them names. Just simply write out the rival, the unconcerned, the organization, and what's the actual elements that are going to be working against the character. If you do that, you're going to start having an amazing summary for what your whole story is. You're going to be able to really write these characters well because you know the carnal reason why they're doing stuff. When you know the carnal reason why people are doing stuff, you're never going to have plot holes. The reason I'm going to talk to you about Resident Evil 3. So what happened was Resident Evil 3 came out just recently, and a lot of people hate Resident Evil 3, not because of the actual game, but because of the choices that the writers took in order to recreate the story. So in other words, there's things in there that are just immature and completely against the character of the original characters, and it feels completely out of place. Like there's a lot of sarcasm, there's a lot of jokes, like little edgy jokes or whatever, being made when people find weapons that are basically going to save their lives. And it's like, why would you make a joke at that time? Wouldn't you be like, thank God I found this shotgun? Not, oh, this will put 2 holes in your head. And that kind of stuff is the problem when you're not thinking of these elements. It's like you got to stay in character. If you're in Resident Evil and you have hundreds of zombies trying to kill you and a super zombie trying to kill you, the last thing you're trying to be is witty. The last thing when you find a life-saving shotgun is, let me make a joke. Let me see if I can be funny right now. That's stupid. You're probably thanking God that you found a freaking shotgun. You're like, oh man, I can't believe I found this shotgun. This is so crazy. Thank God. That's realistic. You just almost got ate by a zombie a second ago. That's realistic. So we have to remember, what is the carnal motivation of the main character throughout the story? Luke, revenge. Every decision he makes in the first Star Wars film was about revenge. He rushes in there to attack Vader. He rushes in there to go and to fight all the stormtroopers and shoot them dead. He goes and gets into fights and stuff with like dealer like criminals and stuff to get information. He's for revenge, and he's gonna get his revenge no matter what. And the mentor is trying to tell him, yo, you need to calm the hell down, bro. You need to calm down, because if you keep acting like this for revenge, then you're going to get yourself killed, and you'll never be able to defeat these people who are really, really, really good at what they do. So what he had to learn, he had to learn the opposite of what his motivation was. His motivation was revenge. He had to learn that we understand that you want to fix things, but the most important thing is to defeat the enemy, not to get revenge, because revenge will make you act stupid. Defeating the enemy means you're going to be really thinking about what you need to do in order to defeat them. Sometimes you have to let the person go instead of trying to chase them down, because you got to blow up a Death Star. So I got to blow up a Death Star. I can't be chasing down Darth Vader trying to fight him and stuff like that. I got to blow up a Death Star. You understand? So that's all I'm saying is, when you're writing these stories, the central motivation of the main character has to be a decision choice. Every single decision in the rest of the story has to be based on that one carnal feeling. Everything else doesn't matter. Not that they were 17 when something happened to that's a whole bunch of backstory. What I need you to do is make sure that every decision the main character makes is because of one carnal emotion that drives them throughout the story. If it's hatred, if they just hate things, make sure the whole story is them basically struggling with hatred. Every decision they make is struggling with hatred. If they're a drug addict, make every single decision make them sweat when they're not doing drugs. Like it's just sweats. Like man, this is hard. Everything's harder for some reason, and they just can't put a finger on it. But it's just difficult. And they should have random outbursts of anger when they're not using drugs. This is important that when we're doing this, that we keep remembering what's there. We don't throw in a funny joke when the story is very serious, right? And at the same time, the story is very serious. I mean, the story is very funny. We don't throw in like super logical conversation points, because that's odd. It's odd to have that in a funny story. Imagine if people just acting normal out of nowhere in a movie where everybody's being goofy and like Happy Gilmore or something. All of a sudden, people are acting super logical. That makes no sense in a movie like Happy Gilmore. So that's what I got for today. If you have any questions, let me know right now. I'm taking questions for 5 minutes. Do you have help creating? Do you have help creating stories and background stories of other characters other than the main character storyline? How do you go about that? Because um, I will get a personality clash. Well, that's the vetting process. Sometimes you can work with people, sometimes you can't. You know, I had to kill a book once because the person that co-wrote the book, just wouldn't budge. They were being they were very about themselves and didn't want to take one for the team in order for all of us to eat. And as a result, I had to kill the book. So you don't necessarily need to work with certain people. I have a lot of people right now who have a lot of creative license. For instance, because I'm a comic book developer, people might think that I write comic book scripts, but I don't. What I do is I write a film. That's what I do. I write films. And when I write those films in a screenplay, I give them directly to my artists during these developments, and they translate it into a comic book or manga or whatever based off of their professional input. Do you understand? So I'm not telling them what's on this page. I'm not telling them how many panels they're doing. I don't tell them when this needs to happen. They're looking at this thing and they're just making decisions. They're just making decisions on their own. And I recruit people who have the ability to do that, who are not confrontational, and who can work with me on doing things like that. I've learned always, no matter what, no matter who you're working with, put a paper in their hand contracting them saying that you have complete authority over the production. You have the right to sell it and the sole right to sell it. So nobody else can go and put the book up themselves. Without your permission, you have complete control. And then if you find out the relationship is bad, that it's not going to work out, you can just kill the production. You can either kill the production by killing the contract, restarting. You can kill the production, continue with someone else if you put the language in there, or you can just straight up, say abort mission and just totally blow it up. Let's see. Let's see this one. A social coward trades his mind, body, and soul to save the life of a mysterious woman who fell from space. Now he must become a brave warrior to stop a galactic threat. Uh, Sounds like a Netflix log line. So what happens is Netflix drops log lines for their films, very short. They would sound exactly like this. It's not a great log line, right? But it gets it done, right? It tells you some of the elements of the story. So in other words, awkward person, right? Finds a woman who came from space, right? Telling you the genre. Now he must become a brave warrior. Brave warrior, so he has to change from one place to the next to stop a galactic threat. Once again, more space. So it's telling you the genre. It's also telling you the personal growth story of the main character. So it hits all those things. It's not the greatest log line in the world, but it will definitely be qualified as a complete log line. Let's see here. Here's a question. I've been trying to make gains for a while, but I struggle with my writing because I'm making a fantasy universe. It's really difficult to condense all the info. It's very easy to do this. All right. So here's my advice to you. Find one key moment in your universe, whatever it is, and make an entire story about that one moment and make that game. And then once that is successful, do something else in the universe. Maybe expand upon it, but make that one situation first. So in other words, I'll give you a great example. Tolkien, talking about the Lord of the Rings, right? Lord of the Rings. He literally took an entire book and wrote about one battle. He said, the Battle of Helm's Deep. That's it. That's the whole, you know how much crap goes on in the Lord of the Rings? You know how much crap, there's so much stuff in the Lord of the Rings universe, right? But the majority of that book is about the Battle of Helm's Deep. Everything that leads up to it, it's like literally 48 hours worth of content. It's 48 hours of stories of universe, the whole universe that goes on for thousands of years with battles before, battles after, entire nations burning down, everything else. And he spends like freaking 700 pages on just 2 days. So that's how I would attack that. If you got a fantasy story that you're trying to make and you're trying to make a video game out of it, find one key moment that you can focus on with not that many characters, right? And make that good. You have your story in the back of your head. You might wrote it down somewhere, but don't focus on all that other stuff because all that other stuff can be developed later on based on how the community reacts to your game. Maybe they like certain things about it and certain things they don't like. Remember, Vegeta from Dragon Ball was a one arc villain. He was only supposed to be there for one arc. But then people said this is the dopest villain I ever seen in my life. He better not die. And all of a sudden, to this day, 30, 40 years later, we still see Vegeta right there selling merchandise because they had to change their whole story just to keep him in because the fans wanted him in. They said, you better not kill him. You better not kill Vegeta. Vegeta's gangster. And they said, all right, I guess we'll keep Vegeta in there. How do we get this ridiculously evil character to stay in the story? And they had to wing him off of his evil, but still make him evil as hell, but wing him off a little bit just to be able to survive. Does one key moment help a new writer that finds their story too broad? Yeah, you're not doing a beat sheet. That's the moment. That's the moment where your story is too broad. If you go through a beat sheet, if you go through the beat sheet, which we talked about on Monday, and you fill that beat sheet out, point after point after point after point, there's no way you can go much wider. The beat sheet is about one character's path. It's not about 7 different characters. It's about one character's path through the story. And is a certain amount of beats from beginning to end of that story. If you go anywhere past that point, your story is too broad. If you're not using the beat sheet, your story is probably too broad because you're probably adding things in there that have nothing to do with the main story. All right. So that's the reality of it. Use the beat sheet. It's a weapon. I don't have any advice on selling animations. The reason why is because it's super difficult to do. You know, this is something that we always say: try to find an agent. I have an agent. I have an agent for publishing, right? So on the literature side, but not on the other side. So I don't really have advice for it. My best cake is find an agent. Agents are the best. They help you write your stuff if they think that it's close enough, right? If it's not close enough, they'll never take you as a representative. So that's kind of like a vetting process. The only beat sheet. So don't worry about it. Just go Google beat sheet, copy the whole list, use it. The beat sheet doesn't change. All right. Everybody uses the same beat sheet. So just Google it, copy down the key points, and then start filling it out for your story. All right, guys, I'm done for the night. Good night. See y'all later and have a great weekend.